BBC Radio.
6 Music.
You are now entering a parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Mark Riley, BBC 6 Music.
Still breathtaking, that is Echo and the Bunnymen and the Killing Moon. Breathtaking also is the fact that we've managed to secure the services of Bob Hughes for the Parallel Universe. Wow, my giddy aunt. Hello, mate.
Oh, hello, mate. Yeah, that is amazing, that single. I remember talking to Mac a few years ago about that, and he said that he really wanted Sinatra to sing that. You know, he could imagine him doing it.
Do you know, I mean, I was just thinking as it was on there, I mean, I made, it's a completely different beast. I made some records with The Fall, and some people really like them, and like I said, a completely different beast. I can't even imagine sitting in the studio and making something quite as majestic and ambitious as that. It is breathtaking. It's just so great.
It is. It's so cinematic, isn't it? So we're looking at NME here, 3rd of September 1983. In the news, Echo and the Bunnymen have been invited to play at Stratford-upon-Avon's Royal Shakespeare Theatre as the culmination of a 2-week youth festival. The Bunnymen, who'll be making the final British appearance of the year, thus apparently making certain that in the UK at least, the quality of Mersey is not strained. Will appear at the end of October. Obviously, I thought that was some kind of reference to the Mekons. Good job I just looked it up, because it's Portia's speech, of course, in The Merchant of Venice.
There you go. Well, I knew that it was taken from Shakespeare by the Mekons and twisted.
The Bunnymen will release a new single around the time of their Bard Beat excursion, this offering probably comprising either Silver or Killing Moon, which you just heard. 2 songs extensively featured on the band's recent tour. There's a great shot of Mac there, just looking very moody on a harbour wall.
Right.
AIDS has claimed another music biz victim in Bavarian-born Klaus Nomi, the German new wave opera singer. Nomi achieved notoriety in the States when David Bowie suggested they appear together on primetime TV's Saturday Night Live. Nomi released 2 albums on RCA last year. He was an affable, if highly decorative character who trained formally as both a cordon bleu chef and a classical opera singer.
Wow.
Nomi had his own cooking slot on a Manhattan cable show called TV Party. I didn't know this.
I've seen him on Saturday Night Live with Bowie, and that's great, isn't it?
I was going to get to that, It just says it. Anyway, in March of 82, he told NME his peculiar fusion evolved from childhood when he pinched some money from his mum's dresser drawer to purchase Elvis's Kid Creole, and she made him exchange it for Maria Callas.
Right.
He was always careful to assert 2 things. His temperament did not match the deep blue of his sculpted coiffure, and his work was not meant to be taken really seriously. Like lightning, he said, it just strikes at random. I mean, that clip is brilliant, isn't it? I mean, but obviously it's the whole sort of plastic tuxedo that he admired that Bowie was wearing, wasn't it? I think when he was doing The Man Who Sold the World, I think. And Nomi thought, I like that. I can see myself in that. And it became a bit of a trademark.
Yeah, and there's a little puppet dolls as well involved in the scenario, aren't there? Yes, brilliant.
Yeah, there is a great clip of him as well, isn't there? Is it Total Eclipse? I think he's doing showed on Whistle Test.
Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, staying with Bowie here, a huge full-page ad for the Bowie World Convention 83 at the Cunard International Hotel in Hammersmith, which is the first weekend in October. So 83, of course, the big comeback, Let's Dance, and all the rest of it. So, for example, they've got video. It says 21 screens showing 15 years of video from around the world. Wow. 21 screens?
Yeah, excellent.
A cinema constantly showing all Bowie films, including The Image. I mean, obviously, we love the guy and everything he did, but you have to be real diehard to sit through all Bowie's films, don't you?
Well, I mean, The Image is short. I mean, it was too short, wasn't it? As I remember, because I did go actually to a Q&A with the guy who made it, Michael
Armstrong. I've got the poster right here on the wall, Mike. You got one for me very kindly.
I did, that's right. And to get some money for a grant to actually pay for it, it had to be half an hour long and make it worth putting on at some of the cinemas. And so they only filmed 15 minutes, so they kept doing the other 15 minutes of flashbacks.
That's right.
So,
amazing.
Where there's a will, there's a way, eh?
Absolutely. Also, there's a large laser disco and a 14,000-foot square indoor market. Also in the news, the Batcave tour with the Specimen and Flesh for Lulu play at a new Leeds venue called the Dortmunder Dungeon in early September, says promoter John Keenan. When I started working on this year's Futurama, I got so many tapes from goth bands I decided to start a club catering for that sort of thing. So I'm opening one night a week in Leeds at the Beer Keller, and on the first night membership would be free, admission set at £2. I mean, John Keenan, you know John, don't you? I mean, he was so pivotal to everything that went on in the sort of punk and post-punk scene in Leeds, wasn't he?
Yeah, completely. I only went to the one Futurama festival, which was the first one, but it was Public Image, and it was Hawkwind and The Fall and the only ones, and Joy Division and Echo and the Bunnymen, Teardrop Explodes, loads of great bands. But John Keenan always at the centre of anything decent that was going on in Leeds. A legend, an absolute legend. In fact, I think there might be a documentary being made about him, something in the back of my mind. I think there might be, yeah.
Really? All right, I'll be interested. Because, as well, the future, he set up F Club, didn't he? And what was it, the New Roscoe, the Duchess as well, I think he was involved with, wasn't he?
Yeah,
All
and the
that stuff.
beer cellar, we used to play there with him as well. Yeah, but the Duchess, I mean, that was the last time, probably. It might be the last time that I saw John, actually, which is I became an honorary Mekon for one night only when the Mekons played there, and I got up and did a couple of songs with them on guitar. But, a legend and a brilliant guy.
Oh, wonderful. Just briefly here, this NME reports on a new Liverpool duo called Care, made up by Ian Broody. Or is it Brody? It's Broody, isn't it?
I will say Brody, but I don't know.
Oh, okay. And Paul Simpson. They got one single out called My Boyish Days. Says here, the press biog tells us of Ian's alter ego as Bunnyman's producer Kingbird, and of Paul being the first person in Liverpool, perhaps in the whole world, to have the famous shaved up the back haircut. He was a trendsetter, Paul Simpson, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he's in Will's book quite a lot, Will Sargent's book, isn't he?
He is. Yeah. Both have long involvements in the Liverpool scene. Paul in the early Teardrops and the aforementioned Wild Swans. Ian in the wildly anarchic Big in Japan and the very ordinary original Mirrors. Both have learnt lessons, hardened themselves against drifting into complacency about what they're doing, and they'd rather not talk about their past mistakes. So the LP, they're waiting for the LP to come out, and the NME thinks it's going to be a masterpiece. But Paul's slightly miffed at the fact that somebody in the NME reviewed the single and described his voice as plummy, which he's struggling to get over.
Right, okay. Again, top fella, Paul Simpson. Top fella.
Yeah, he is, definitely. And he's got a book out as well, hasn't he? Various singles coming out. And also the Dream Syndicate's first album, which is something of a classic, I feel.
Do you know, I don't know this album. We've played Dream Syndicate on this section of the programme before now. But I look forward to hearing it. Tell me when it's over. That's not me saying that to you. That's what it's called.
I know.
Okay, mate, fair enough.
Yeah, it's really a shame.
Gonna play that for Bob Hughes because he loves it. That is a Dream Syndicate, and tell me when it's over. Mark Riley here, Rob over there.
Yes, yeah, look at the NME here, 3rd of September 1983. Huge Fall fans as well, Dream Syndicate. Massive on the Fall.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Bit of film here. So, page 18. Okay, so The Twilight Zone gets a cinema treatment. Okay, no surprise to find Steven Spielberg behind the idea of renovating the Twilight Zone, continuing America's love-hate relationship with its TV set and honouring one of its early crushes. The program itself was a classic American TV series, late 50s, early 60s, sharply written, quickly directed, and consumed, custom made for its medium, and quite a testing ground for emergent talent. Have you seen the film?
I don't recall. I have seen some of the episodes of the original, obviously, and one of the most terrifying things that I can remember is the one, you probably know where I'm going to go with this, but I think it might be William Shatner. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a bloke on a plane looking out of the window, and there's a gremlin on the wing, which is like an albino gorilla. Yes. Oh man, that's so scary.
It is brilliant. Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because the film itself, people who don't know, so it's made into 4 segments. John Landis does a couple, Spielberg, Joe Dante, and George Miller, who probably most famous for doing Mad Max, does the final segment, which is a remake of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Oh.
It says, motored by fears of flying with John Lithgow instead of as the William Shatner character, scaring himself to death, airsick, and an electrical storm going on, and something odd is sitting on the wing, eating its way through the engines. Oh. It is really terrifying. It's just a brilliant, brilliant scene. Yeah. And obviously, when they get down there, when the plane eventually lands, William Shatner, sort of John Lithgow, is in a state of shock. But nobody will believe them, of course, because it was stormy. They just think the engine was chewed up by a storm, not a gremlin.
Well, it's up to you to make your own mind up as to whether it existed or whether it was just a paranoia, isn't it?
Yeah, really clever. Alan Vega has got a solo album out, interviewed by Barney Hoskins in New York, says temperatures are in the high 90s, he said, and Vega's Soho loft is like a furnace. How, he wonders, did suicide come off these streets? How could they have been doing stuff like Space Blue and Speed Queen in 1974? And Vega says, I really don't know. He says, we were really, I'm paraphrasing here, we were really hacked off politically and all ways else. But the other guys like Richard Hell, Tom Verlaine, even though they had their own anger and brilliance from being out of town and being the outcasts, they didn't have what we had, which was just street survival. Essentially, Martin Rev and I are shy and introverted, but in Brooklyn, it's like cowboy land. You have to learn your smarts.
Right, wow.
I mean, he's asked about his influences. There's the usual stuff. The usual narrative here is, okay, they loved Velvets, Elvis, Iggy, the Stooges, all that kind of stuff. But he does mention the fact he was really, really taken with Silver Apples, who probably not on many people's radar in the early 80s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, early 70s, you mean, yeah?
Yeah, but when he's talking here, in the 80s. Right. He says they're the 2-man band from the 60s that nobody's heard who did this repetitive, almost Kraftwerk type of thing. Just incredible. One of them played a thing called the theremin. The other played drums. They were closer to the 80s than the Velvets were, he says. Also, the other thing was seeing Question Mark and the Mysterians doing 96 Tears on American Bandstand. He said that was like the holy grail for me. That song is the national anthem as far as I'm concerned. And you can see that, can't you?
In the keyboard, well, it's all keyboard-driven suicide, isn't it? But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and of course those early gigs were notorious, weren't they? Because people would be chucking stuff at them. There's a famous Clash support gig.
That was a real kind of catalyst for the Clash. They didn't turn on the fans, but they were like, we've invited this band on to open for us. They're not exactly the same as us. Listen to them. But yeah, I think it might have been a Glasgow gig, which was particularly gnarly.
Yeah, that was it.
But I did see Suicide a couple of times, not on the Clash tour, I don't think. Right. But yeah.
Did you see him sort of back in, sort of late 70s time, early 80s?
It would have been early 80s, I reckon, probably.
Okay, wow, amazing, though. He does say here, like, Suicide has spaces where you can put in your own beat and your own vocal. He said everybody said it was minimal, but actually it was maximal. It's just that there were holes in it. In the very early days, people would bring their own instruments, like trombones and stuff, and play along, even when people were throwing bottles and chairs at us. That was just their way of performing, he says.
Love it.
I also love the fact he kind of signs off here, something I didn't expect. That obviously there's an accepted narrative about a lot of bands, isn't there? And the sort of influences they draw from. But he says he's a massive fan of Hot Chocolate. He says, I thought that guy Errol Brown was just the most incredible performer. He'd hardly move, but you sensed an incredible pain in the guy, like he was really hurting, and there was this air of danger to him. And that first album, produced by Mickey Most, is unreal. I couldn't believe the amount of sound, the richness of it, and the complexity.
Yeah, but they've kind of come round again, haven't they? Because everyone's a winner. Ty Segall did that cover version of it. But
Yeah.
Cards on the Table, there's all that guilty pleasures rubbish that doesn't really exist. But if you don't like Everyone's a Winner by Hot Chocolate, then someone needs to have a word, surely.
Yeah, what's not to like? So you played You Shook Me All Night Long before, didn't you? So Barney Hoskins reviews Flick of the Switch by AC/DC. Says, for those about to cry, oh no, I refute you. I'm really sorry about this, but they've made some fine records and remain one of the most dynamic live acts of rock. What continues to impress is their simplicity. Says, effectively, they carry on working the same song year in, year out, and still something as titanically oafish as This House Is on Fire lurches out of the maelstrom. He does have a point. He says the group finally bridges the yawning gulf between Slade and the Immigrant Song. If you can or want to believe John Bonham stomping out a beat for Noddy Holder.
Yeah, and if you look at the comparisons he's making, I mean, the Ramones could fit in there as well, couldn't they, ironically?
Yeah, definitely. Other new albums, got XTC's Mumma by Richard Cook and REM's Murmur, which I fell in love with by Richard Grabel. I think the thing with me about that record was it was just, I couldn't see any sort of predecessors, like antecedents for it. You know, it just seemed to be, my frame of reference was a lot smaller in those days, of course, but it didn't sound like anything else I'd heard at that time.
Right.
Gigs this week got the Smiths at Liverpool Poly, also at the Venue in Liverpool in London, alongside the Go-Betweens and Felt. There's a night out.
Great.
Ozzy Osbourne at Edinburgh Playhouse. You've got Sun Ra at Sheffield University, Death Cult at Swansea Marina, The Fall at the Rock City in Nottingham, Hawkwind and others at Milton Keynes Woughton Campus, UK Electronics, it says here. Chuck Berry and Screaming Lord Sutch at Peterborough Embankment. Peter Gabriel at Austell Coliseum, The Damned at the Tower Ballroom in Birmingham, Wham, Hammersmith Odeon, John Hyatt at the Half Moon in Putney. On the live review front, you got the Mekons, talking of which, at the Hot Club in Brixton by Susan Williams. Says they burst from the grave, fresh-faced and ready to rave. The ideal venue for the Mekons would be the Fifth Form dorm just past midnight. Plenty of tuck and a crafty woodbine under the sheets. Harry Wharton on steel guitar and Bob Cherry on the knobs. And the drum machine. It's as if Roger McGough had rewritten Brideshead Revisited for dyslexics. Such blatant hints as Tom Meekon's strapping Edward Fox quiff and the Eton Boating Song encore expose the true, flimsily whimsical soul of the Mekons.
So Susan Williams was actually Seething Wells, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? I didn't know.
I'm pretty sure.
That makes sense. Time for a quick Public NME. David Bowie and David Byrne, both tentatively scheduled to take part in a new art opera epic called The Civil Wars, A Tree is Best Measured When It's Down. The work has 5 segments, each set in a different country. Byrne is writing the scores, and Bowie is believed to be interested in playing Abraham Lincoln in the Japanese section of the opera. What Abraham Lincoln is doing in the Japanese section is anybody's guess.
Good Lord, that sounds convoluted, doesn't it?
It does a little, yeah. And when Jeff Beck was doing an interview with the Old Grey Whistle Test, he did it only on the condition that a member of his record company walked through the studio naked playing the bagpipes. I don't think they actually showed that at the time, did they? But...
Right. OK, well, we've got to go, haven't we, Bob?
We have got to go, yes.
OK, so, well, thanks very much to you, mate, and to Withered Hand tonight, and Mark Plant, and Perfect Peter, and Lewis, and Miss Shelley. I'm off to see Aldous Harding. Gideon is next, and we're going to leave you now with Malcolm McLaren and Soweto. And see you Monday, Caitlin Rose live in session.
Believe me. Prepare to exit the parallel universe.
Mark Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.